In this segment, I'd like to describe the styles of direct speech rules. Now, as I mentioned in the previous segment, not all languages will need these rules. For example, English doesn't need these rules. But if your language has some grammatical mechanism for encoding relative status when two people speak to one another, then you'll want to use these rules. For example, suppose a man is talking to a king. The man may use one set of pronouns and the king may use a different set of pronouns. Or the man may include some honorific morpheme or some other method of encoding honorifics. If your language has something like that, then you'll want to use these styles of direct speech rules. Before using these rules, the first thing to do is come here to the feature adjustment rules and make sure that the features associated with direct speech aren't hidden. So for example, you'll want to make sure that the features called speaker, listener, speaker's attitude, speaker's age, speaker-listener age, and speech style, make sure that those features aren't hidden. So these should be unchecked. Then you can come here to the styles of direct speech and you'll see this dialog. Now here we can set up various combinations of speaker, listener, speaker's attitude, speaker's age, speaker-listener age, and speech style. And then we'll set the speech style for each combination. The first thing to do is to define the styles of speech that are relevant to our language. So you click on the button called Feature Set, and here's a dialog that contains all of the syntactic categories that have been defined for TBTA. And then for each syntactic category, it has all of the features associated with that category. And for each feature, you can see the values that have been defined. We want to go to the feature called speech style. Now every proposition will have a feature called speech style, even the propositions that aren't direct speech. So for our first value, let's enter some value called not direct speech. And we'll set the propositions that aren't direct speech to this value. Then we can define the styles of speech that are relevant. For example, let's say plain, deferential, honorific, and blunt. You can define whatever values are relevant in your language. Then, here in the speech style column, you'll see that those values are available, and you can specify them. For our first row, let's say not direct speech, and we're going to leave all of these other columns empty. So this row will be used for all values that aren't direct speech, and this value, not direct speech, will be assigned to that proposition. Now the easiest way to build these tables is to click the button called Search for Speech Situations. Do you want to search for speech situations now? Generally, before searching for speech situations, you should first turn off your default speech style rules. If you've already done that and want to proceed with the search, click Yes below. If you haven't turned off your default rules and want to do that now, click No. Okay, we haven't turned off our default rule, so let's click No. We'll turn this off, and now I'll click the button again, and now we can say yes. Let's have it search Discourse 1.1 through Discourse 1.11. This is a short story about David and Goliath. So in Discourse 1.3 it finds, Goliath was a soldier for Philistia's army. Each day Goliath came to Israel's army and shouted to its soldiers, "Choose one man to fight with me." Okay, so this is Goliath shouting to the soldiers in Israel's army. So it's a soldier speaking to a soldier. His attitude is antagonistic. Let's say for this situation it will be blunt. Okay, in Discourse 1.6, David asked some soldiers, "What will the king give to the man who kills Goliath?" So a man is talking to some soldiers. Let's say here, speech style is plain. The soldiers answered David, "If a man kills Goliath," so here it's soldiers speaking to a man. Let's say it's again plain. Then David went to King Saul and said to him, "I'll fight with Goliath." So a man is talking to a king. Let's say he uses honorific. Then King Saul said to David, "You're not able to fight with Goliath." So now the king is speaking to a man. Let's say the style is plain. David said, "Today Israel's God will help me kill you." So this is David talking to Goliath. A man is talking to a soldier with antagonistic attitude. Let's say this is blunt. Okay, please remember to turn your default speech rules back on now. So we'll turn it back on. So here are the various situations that were found, and it will set this. For each situation, it will now set the speech style feature to these values. I'd also like to mention there's a button called Included Features. If for some reason verb time is relevant, or perhaps illocutionary force is relevant, you can specify whichever features you want to be included in this particular table. And I'd also like to mention there's a checkbox down here, Add Column for Source Text. Perhaps the people that you work with, maybe they have certain expectations for biblical texts, and they may have different expectations in other texts. You can have a column for source text. This is one of two places in TBTA where rules include the source text. So for example, maybe in the Bible you'll want to use certain pronouns, but in other texts you'll want to include different pronouns. You can set this up here. We don't want that column, so I'm going to say don't include that column. So let's save this rule. Okay, now if we look here, speech style is not direct speech. That's our default value. Here, John is talking. The speaker is a man and the listener is a woman. Now our speech style rules don't include this particular combination yet. So let's go back and we'll add a row. Let's say when a man talks to a woman, he uses honorific speech. Okay, now if we rest the cursor here, we'll see that speech style is honorific. So these rules are executed even before the semantic representation is displayed. If we rest the cursor here, we can see the entries toward the bottom say features changed from speech style equal not applicable to not direct speech by transfer grammar, row 1, and then it was changed from not direct speech to honorific by row 8. So you can see that the rules are executed from the top to the bottom. Each row that applies will set the feature value here, but ultimately row 8 was the last one that applied, so now our direct speech style is honorific. Now we can go here to our spellout rules. Let's add a new group called speech style. Now I'll illustrate how to use this feature in your grammar. Let's write a table spellout rule that will add suffixes to verbs. Now we want to look at clause features. Let's say if it's not direct speech, we'll leave that cell empty. Now let's add a column. If it's plain, we'll add a suffix plain. If it's deferential, we'll add a suffix def. If it's honorific, we'll add on. And if it's blunt, we'll add blunt. Every table rule needs a layer for each name. We'll call this speech styles. We need a tag for the suffix. We'll call it speech style. We can add a name for the row. Speech styles. For the grammar topics, we'll add a topic called speech style. There it is. Add speech style morphemes. Okay, now If we click the Generate button, we'll see the grammar being executed. Okay. I'm going to say show morphemes. And here, okay, John is talking to a woman. And here we see that the honorific speech morpheme was added. If you see in the pop-up, read was changed to read on by speech style, layer 1 speech styles, row 1 called speech styles, column 4 honorific. We don't have anything over on this verb said because it's the speech style here was set to not direct speech, and you recall that in here, when it's not direct speech, we don't add any morpheme. That concludes this segment.